Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. If you are preparing for an SDET or QA automation interview, this video is going to be a game changer for you. Today, I am covering the top 20 unexpected SDET interview questions with detailed approaches and real practical examples you can actually use in your interview. Now, these are not your typical "what is selenium" questions. These are the tricky, real-world, scenario-based questions that top companies like Google, Amazon, Flipkart, and ThoughtWorks actually ask. So whether you are a fresher just starting your QA journey or an experienced SDET looking to switch jobs, this video is for you. Grab a coffee, sit back, and let's get right into it. And hey, if you find this helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Okay, let's go. Before we dive into the questions, let me give you 5 golden tips that will make you stand out in any SDET interview. Tip number 1. Think out loud. Don't just give the answer. Walk the interviewer through your reasoning. They don't just want the right answer. They want to see how you think. Tip 2. Start with the approach before mentioning any tools. Don't say, "I will use Selenium." Say, "First I would identify stable locators, then I would automate using," and so on, then see the difference. Tip 3. Use real project examples. Nothing impresses an interviewer more than, "In my last project, we faced exactly this issue and here is what we did." That is the stuff that wins offers. Tip 4. Show debugging mindset. Companies want SDETs who can dig deep, find root causes, and not just report bugs. And tip 5. Never say, "I don't know." Instead say, "I have not faced this specifically, but here is how I would approach figuring it out." That is initiative. That is what gets you hired. Alright, now let's get into the questions. Question 1. How do you test something that has no UI and no API yet? This one throws a lot of candidates off. They freeze because there is nothing to click, nothing to call. But here is the key. You test from the requirements, not the interface. Your approach should be, collaborate with developers to understand the expected behavior. Then use mocks and stubs to simulate what that service will eventually return. Here is a real example. Imagine the payment service isn't built yet, but your team needs to test the checkout flow. What do? You create a mock API, a fake service that returns predefined success or failure responses. Now you can test your integration logic without waiting for the real service. The point is, an SDET never waits. You find a way to test. That's the mindset they are looking for. Question 2. How do you test when requirements are incomplete? This is so common in agile teams. And honestly, if you say, "I wait for requirements to be complete," that is a red flag. The right approach is, first, create an assumption sheet. Document every assumption you are making. Second, ask targeted clarification questions to the product owner or BA. And third, design high-level test scenarios based on business impact. Test the most critical flows first. For example, imagine you are testing a search feature, but the spec does not mention what filters are available. Don't freeze. Look at similar products in the market. Apply standard search behavior assumptions, document them, and get sign-off. That is mature engineering thinking. Question 3. Your automation switch suddenly takes twice as long overnight. How do you debug this? This is a performance and debugging question. Here is your systematic approach. Step 1. Compare timestamps in your CI logs between yesterday's run and today's run. Step 2. Check recent merges. Did someone add a heavy test? Step 3. Look at infrastructure. Is the test server slow? High CPU? Network issues? Step 4. Look for heavy network calls or tests that wait for timeouts. Practically speaking, filter your test logs by execution time, find the tests that suddenly jump from 2 seconds to 30 seconds, and isolate them. 9 times out of 10, one slow test or a network dependency is the culprit. Question 4. How do you design test data for parallel execution? This is where a lot of automation frameworks break down. When tests run in parallel, they are all touching the same database, the same users, the same data, and you get race conditions and false failures. The solution? 3 words: unique, isolated, dynamic. Use data pools, pre-created sets of test data. Use unique IDs, like appending a timestamp or UUID to every username. And never share data between parallel tests. Simple example: if you are running 10 parallel tests that each create a user, name them user_123456789, user_123456789, and so on using the current timestamp. Problem solved. Each test owns its own data. Question 5. You have only one day to automate in this sprint. What do you automate? This is really testing your prioritization skills. And the right answer is automate the highest risk, most stable flows at the API level. Why API? Because API tests are faster to write, faster to execute, and more stable than UI tests. You get more bang for your automation buck. Why high risk? Because of login breaks, everything breaks. So automate login at the API level, not the full UI regression. You have got one day. Be smart about it. The key phrase to use in your interview: I prioritize based on risk, stability, frequency of execution. High risk, stable, frequently run flows first. Prototype screens. Those can wait. Question 6. How do you test a search feature when there are no clear requirements? Great exploratory testing question. Here is your checklist for search. Relevance. Do the results make sense? Ranking. Are the most relevant results at the top? Typos. Does IPHON return iPhone? Synonyms. Does mobile return the same as phone? Edge cases. What happens with empty search, special characters, very long strings? Also test negative cases. Search for something that does not exist. What message does the user see? Is it user-friendly? This answer shows breadth of thinking. It shows you don't need someone to hand you a test case checklist. You can think like a user and a tester. Question 7. Difference between flaky tests and an unstable environment? Such an important distinction. Flaky tests fail inconsistently. They might pass 3 times and fail once, with no clear pattern. Usually caused by timing issues, race conditions, or bad assertions in your test code. Unstable environments show a pattern. It fails on staging but not locally. It fails when 2 specific services are down. It fails at peak traffic times. Diagnosis trick. If a test fails randomly with no reproducible pattern, it's the test. If it consistently fails under specific conditions, it's the environment. One more tip. Keep a flaky test registry. Track which tests are unreliable, quarantine them, and fix them separately. Don't let them pollute your test results. Question 8. How do you automate CAPTCHA and OTP? Short answer: you don't break CAPTCHA. You bypass it. In test environments, you work with your dev team to either disable CAPTCHA or use a backend hook that accepts a fixed, known value. For OTP, use a fixed test OTP like 123456 in your QA environment. or use a mailbox API service like MailSlurp to programmatically read emails. The key point: these features exist for security in production. In test environments, you design workarounds by design, not by hacking. Question 9. How do you verify logs in automation? Logs are your best friend for debugging. In your automation framework, you should be able to fetch logs via SSH, a logging API, or a log aggregation tool like Splunk or Elk. Validate key things, timestamps, error messages, and unexpected exceptions. And critically, attach logs to your test report. When a test fails, the log should be right there in the report so anyone can debug without hunting for files. Classic example: search the backend logs for null pointer exception after a test failure. That tells you exactly where the code broke. Question 10. How do you test async-generated emails? Emails are tricky because they are asynchronous. You trigger an action and the email arrives eventually. The key is polling with retry logic. Use a mailbox API service, MailSlurp, Durilla Mail, or similar, to create a test inbox. Trigger your action, then poll the inbox every few seconds until the email arrives. Validate the subject, content, and delivery time. Also set a timeout. If the email does not arrive in 30 seconds, fail the test. Don't let async tests hang forever. Question 11. The API is correct but the UI shows wrong data. How do you debug? This is a great lead debugging question. There are three suspects: the UI mapping logic, the caching layer, or the data transformation layer. Classic example: API sends price as 900. UI shows 1000. The issue is likely in the formatting or rounding logic in the front-end code. Your debugging order: check the Network tab in browser DevTools. What does the response actually look like? Is the right data reaching the browser? If yes, the bug is in the UI rendering code. If no, something is going wrong in the transformation or caching layer. Question 12. How do you test rate limiting? Rate limiting protects APIs from abuse. To test it, you need to hit the API with high-frequency requests and validate the 429 too many requests response. In your automation, write a loop that fires, say, 20 requests per second. After the rate limit is hit, you should receive a 429 status code and a retry after header telling you when to try again. Test the boundary conditions. What happens at exactly the limit? One request below? One above? And does the counter reset correctly after the time window expires? Question 13. How do you pick locators when IDs are dynamic? Dynamic IDs change every page load. They are useless for automation. Instead, look for stable attributes, text content, ARIA labels, data test ID attributes, or CSS class names. Use XPaths that describe what the element does, not what it is called. Like, button, contains, text, comma, login. This will always find the login button regardless of its ID. Talk to your dev team about adding data test ID attributes. It's a best practice. Your developers add stable test identifiers and your tests become rock solid. Question 14. How do you test machine learning features? ML testing is fundamentally different. You cannot assert exact outputs because ML is probabilistic. Instead, you validate accuracy ranges and behavioral patterns. For a recommendation engine, do not assert that user A will always get product X. Instead, assert that recommendations are within the user's interest category at least 80% of the time. That's a meaningful, testable assertion. Also test for bias, edge cases, and data drift over time. Machine learning tests are more statistical than functional. Question 15. Test strategy for offline and online apps. These apps are complex. They need to work without connectivity, then sync when back online. Your test strategy must cover 4 areas. Caching. Does the app show the right data offline? Sync. Does data sync correctly when connectivity returns? Conflict resolution. What if the same record was modified both online and offline? And error recovery. What if the sync fails halfway? Key test scenario. Add items while offline. Disable network in your device settings or use network throttling tools. Then re-enable network and verify every item synced correctly. Question 16. How do you test dark mode without AI tools? It's not just about colors. It's about consistency and accessibility. Validate the CSS classes toggle correctly between dark and light mode. Validate color contrast ratios meet WCAG accessibility standards. Specifically check, background should be dark, text should be light. And critically, does the dark mode persist after a page refresh or session restart? Many dark mode bugs appear only after refresh. Also check images and icons. Some only look good in light mode and appear invisible in dark mode. Question 17. A bug cannot be reproduced locally. Now what? This happens all the time in production. Your systematic approach. First, check the logs from the environment where it was reported. Second, compare environment configurations. Maybe production has a different version or config. Third, look at the data. Is the bug triggered by specific edge case data? Fourth, replicate network conditions. Maybe it only happens under high latency. Example, bug reported saying the checkout fails occasionally. You cannot reproduce it locally. After log analysis, you find it happens when response time exceeds 1 millisecond and production has higher latency. Solution, use network throttling tools to simulate that latency locally. Question 18. How do you automate a UI that changes every release? This is about building resilient automation. The answer is to reduce UI dependency. Instead of asserting on dynamic UI tables, call the API and validate the response directly. UI is just a view. The truth lives in the backend. Use functional locators. Describe elements by what they do, not how they look. And if UI keeps changing, that is a test architecture problem. Talk to your team about adding stable test attributes like data test ID to critical elements. The principle is test behavior, not implementation details. Question 19. One thing you do not automate? Great question for testing your judgment. And the honest answer is unstable or rapidly changing UI. If a screen is being redesigned every sprint, don't automate it. The cost of maintaining those tests will be higher than the value they provide. The ROI is negative. Wait for the UI to stabilize. Focus automation effort on stable, high-risk flows. This shows maturity. Not every test needs to be automated, and knowing what not to automate is as important as knowing what to automate. Bonus answer. One-time setup scripts, highly creative exploratory tests, and tests requiring human visual judgment. These are also poor candidates for automation. Question 20. The final one. How do you test backward compatibility? As APIs evolve, you must ensure old clients do not break. Your strategy should be keep a regression suite that runs old client API calls against new API versions. Key validations, old required fields still exist. New fields are optional, not required. Response structure has not broken existing parsing logic. Status codes are consistent. Example, when your team releases API version 2 which adds a new field, ensure version 1 clients, which do not send or expect that field, still work perfectly. Never break existing integrations. That's the rule. And that's a wrap on all 20 questions. Honestly, If you have made it to this point, you are serious about your STET career, and I respect that. I hope these questions gave you real clarity on what interviewers are actually looking for: structured thinking, practical approach, and real examples. Now, before you close this video, I need a small favor from you, and it takes literally 2 seconds. Like this video if it helped you. It genuinely helps the channel grow and reach other STETs who need this content. Go on, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel. I put out QA, automation, and STET career content regularly, and you do not want to miss the next one. Share this with your friends or your Slack WhatsApp groups. Your one share could help someone land their dream STET role. And save this video for your interview prep. Bookmark it. Come back to it the night before your interview. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching. All the best for your interviews. Go crack it. See you in the next one.